Oh, all right, all right. So here we got 2 week 2 week challenge 22 bunch of cool art. Hey Atsuki, how are you? See, Atsuki, you did too. Yeah, you're such an overachiever. It's great. It's fantastic. No, that. So I think both are cool. I think the my like issue. I think you did really well. I think my issue with these kind of drawings is that like when they're becoming so in like maybe instructional, like that the world has a horizon line, there's a mountain on there, and then there's clouds, and it becomes, I guess, depictive. Like ho- this is gonna sound worse than it actually is, but like a child draws it. That doesn't sound good. But hear me out. Like it becomes so descriptive or depictive, like that of an environment that the narrative or the location is becomes secondary, but you are focusing on telling the story in a way where it has to everything has to be fitted in the image. Like the fact that you're drawing the everything out to the edge of the paper. Uh, Let me try to find an artist. I referenced this artist before on another stream, but I'll try to find it. There we go. There is an artist I know. His name is Andrei Ryabotchev, and his style, like this is of course it's just pencil drawings, um, but there's one thing to uh, let me try to find some more. Andrei Ryabovichev. Oh, God. His like the digital style is very like everything has to be drawn perfectly. But when you like allow the paper to be on its own and like continue the drawing, and then you have a very like heavy detailed area, and then you rest the rest of the paper. You see how it kind of aids their narrative. Like he doesn't need to render everything out to the very edge of the paper, right? You lose some of that energy by doing so. Obviously, these are quite sketchy and so on, but there is something to it. So my issue with that is like it on these ones when you render out the background, it just becomes very stiff um, and too depictive. That being said, doing it this way, you know, like a section of it is dark so you can show the glow. I think that's really cool. It becomes more of like a graphical element, which is strong, which makes it fun. If we look at the design, Star Thrones was the topic, and it is a nice marriage between the two. Uh, I think this guy was, what was it? The dog, was it? I can't remember. The hound. Yeah, and I think that's a cool beginning. Um, and with this mesh is so well constructed. Uh, One thing though, like I would now it's going to be me drawing on top of this. But what if the volume is there's a fold in the volume. You should follow the line. I know it's not easy, but when you're sketching up these this mesh system, try to draw them like there is a fold. That way you can create a lot more interest, and you can play around with volumes. And another way of what you I think a flaw in your drawings is that like the light becomes evenly lit. I know it's really hard with pencils, but you should try to uh, like Mike Avazido, I'm butchering his name. Uh, he mentioned this a lot, and I think it's true. Like if you group your values and simplify them, you'll have a lot stronger read and a lot stronger volume. Given uh, given that um, his style is very stylized, but I still think it warrants that feedback warrants on your pencil drawings, because you're making a smooth gradient over everything, and what that happens is that you lose a little bit of that clear uh, how we read the volumes. Um, I'll try. Uh, I'll try to find a drawing. Oh, maybe it is online. Probably not. It's gonna be hard to find. Yeah, it's gonna be impossible to find in my depths of hell. But anyways, here's a kind of close enough comparison. Like, let's close that one down. No. Did I open it in Photoshop or? Oh, it was on there. Oh yeah, Amir, how's it going? Yeah, so my point being, like, you rendered everything equally around, and and for example, by limiting the palette and pushing your value range down, but still having them read in masses, um, will help your drawings a lot more. Like like this groupation here on the rib cage. I mean, granted, this drawing is very sketchy, and it's just a sketch, but it showcases my point. Um, like if you just clamp the range and make the range darker, you'll have more room on either end. The problem with in your drawings is that when you don't do that, uh, your drawings become rendered but flat. Does that make sense? Looking at the design, I think it's pretty cool. One issue I have with this these pop, what are they? Whatever they're called. They're like studs. Is that it doesn't share the, it doesn't repeat itself again, and a lot of the shapes are unique by area. Like here, the shoes are very curvy and organic and stacked like that. While here, everything is meshed and angular, and on the shoulders, the shapes are like that, but they are kind of like stacked organically, and then very angular line. And what issue with it is that when you're mixing too many shape languages, there is always a chance of it being too convoluted and hard to understand and read. So when you're designing stuff, and you jar the shape language, it can be a statement, like it's a mixture of shapes together, and that's the design. But like anything, if you look at any product, um, let's say, like a phone like this, like the subtle bevels and lines and details, like they all go together, even though they don't share the same language. But in design, there is like numerical curves, like you can have French curves and so on, and it's a certain degree of curve curve. The intensity of the curve is at a certain degree, like the intensity of it. And then we're using French curves, for example. If you use those when you're designing, regardless of what you're designing, to some degree, you're gonna have unified look. I mean, yeah, it's it's an old Xperia gaming phone. It's pretty cool. It's like a PlayStation 1. Pretty decent. Um, yeah, so that's the issue I feel with these is like if you would have just repeated a little bit of subtleties of them together, like a little bit of a kink on the buckle or a screw here and there, and then you'll unify the design better. Yeah, Eric. I didn't do the stream last night, like the 2 week challenge pain over. So I think I'll just spend a little bit of time on giving everyone some feedback. Um, who did that one? I mean, Gjork. Nice. Dothraki Mall. So I like this one, but for me, there is a fundamental flaw in the pose. Like, if we think about the what's it called, perspective, and where the feet are placed, um, and because of that, it makes everything be very, very flat. So if, for example, he's gonna have a martial art pose, uh, I did this actually with a fellow artist many years ago. Uh, because I have a martial art background, there is this theory of to how much percent should you have your weight on the back foot versus the front foot, uh, and in terms of like uh, if you're jabbing or if you're power punching, you can't have too much weight on your front foot if you're gonna strike with force, because you need to have be able to uh, to plant the back foot and drive the punch forward, right? And so we made this calculation. It's quite silly, but if there's a center point there and it connects to the ground and to the perspective, you can measure from the point of center point of gravity or balance, like what's the distance relative to each other, and like how are you posing the weight on the character so that you can actually in perspective draw where the weight lies. Like if it's a forward movement, of course you need to shift the weight forward, uh, and and things like that, right? It's a bit silly, but it does make sense when we see it like this. Like this is the original. We can see how the pose doesn't hold weight, right? Because he's like in a line. So by doing this, probably should be doing a little bit more as well, like that. Now we have a lot better center of gravity here, and the back leg holds more weight to the front leg. Ideally, I would probably curve the curves a little bit different on the front leg. Not having it so sharp, so that we get the sense that the foot is actually coming forward more rather than bending backwards in space. Hey Red Skull, how's it going, man? Which leads us to the second point of the pose, which I'm having an issue with, is that like the hip to the shoulders, it's very squared and there's no rotation. Hey Oms, how's it going? The issue with that is like if you're in a pose and you're square in the pose, you're not showing any momentum, and especially if you're swinging your arm backwards with your weapon, right? So probably what you would like to want to do is have subtle variety in the pose to show stronger momentum, so that the character is not squared up with the hips and shoulders. And also, when all the curves are even, you stiffen things up as well. So what you would probably want to do is, again, subtle variety, that would go a long way. And also the anatomy seems a bit... I understand the idea that the foreshortening, we're looking down at him, but it's important then to follow through with that and not have this horizon line there if we're looking down. Otherwise you're curving it really in a weird way. We need some clear overlap as well, so I'm just gonna rough it up a bit so we have a clear overlap of him leaning over his own volume. So that's the original. That's the adjustment. And in terms of design, I think it's pretty cool. It's a cool mixture. It works really well. I don't think it's bad, design-wise. There's some, like the biggest issue is just pose and perspective. All the other things as they are is pretty decent. For the level of time put into it. I can see it's not, like the best painting you've ever done, and it doesn't need to be. It's all about the character and the feel of the concept. And with that, I think it works. It's just the pose that kind of keeps it back a bit. And last note, I mean, the head could probably be, posed slightly better, slightly stronger, to showcase a little bit better perspective. So he's has a better line of action. I'm not gonna save these, by the way. I'm just gonna save the VOD. So these are Amir, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Amir. It's pretty cool. I think. I think design-wise, it's a fantastic marriage. I really like the idea. Uh, in terms of shape-wise, like what I talked about with Atsuki, I think here that marriage works a lot better. Like there's a lot of similar shapes mixed in a good balance with each other, so it reads really well. Um, but uh, it has a little bit of the same issues like Atsuki had um, with light. Eric Ricky, no, it isn't. It's an open topic of Star Thrones. The idea is that you just practice. You practice your skill set. And the topic was Star Thrones, open ended. Do what you want. Some people do character design, some people do illustrations. So the same here goes for Amir a little bit like for Georg, like the perspective and how he's placed in the depth. And there's some weird issue going on with the pose where his weight is like that and his feet are like that, but the perspective is the horizon is kind of like over here, and it makes it look like he should be sitting down on his butt, like he's resting his weight, like he's falling, which makes it look slightly odd. Hey Zelin, welcome. So it's always important to try to get a sense of that. And if you used a photo to find the pose, usually what happens is there's subtle variation that breaks the photo source that you haven't applied. Like a horizon line that you put on the floor could be one of them, and then you're basing the drawing off the flaw, and then all of a sudden the pose that you sourced from the photo doesn't work anymore. And again, it's kind of the same issue with squaring the character up a bit too much. I know I keep returning to it, but it's an important little adjustment that creates variation, a more appealing look to the character. and I feel that the light is very evenly lit. I started out by putting a gradient on the legs a little bit. The reason is why is because when you're lighting everything evenly, like the toe and leg has the same intensity as the top, you're flattening the intended depth. What I try to mean about that is, like, if you would take in isolation, take the fact that you're drawing a character in space, right? We're looking down at him. He's standing, and we're looking. The horizon line is behind him. We can see him with his feet planted and so on. And if this area is as with intense white as this area, we're actually flattening the. Hey, Leo wins just for the follow. We're actually flattening the illusion of depth, because in theory, like if you would look, if something is towards the camera, we're looking. I mean, now I'm making an extreme point, right? And we're looking down at him in perspective, like that. Forget this guy. So the perspective is something like, right, we're looking down at him. We can't have as much intensity there as at the top of his head, because that's closer to the camera, if you're thinking about volumetric fog, right? So by always doing that subtle adjustment of having the most intense point at like a main area, like the torso or head, and let the legs still have the value range, but calm it down a lot more so the intensity isn't evenly spread. Then you can start directing the eye to great areas. And same goes for like intensity. So to get something really, really bright, you need to save your highlights to the place where you need it really, really bright. Even if it's like a white armor. Hey, Richie. No, it's not mine. It's a 2-week challenge, Painovers. Amir, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is, like, even though a stormtrooper has white armor, there still has to be like a readability to it. The problem is, like, when we see a stormtrooper in super lit hallways, the reflectivity is it's high and we can't really see it. But if we take this intensity and puts it on the shoe, like, that shoe is instantly brought to the same focal area as the chest, right? Even though now it comes across as white, it's still not competing with the flow of how we are reading the presentation. And another thing, the same applies to this guy, by the way. So if you've decided your light conditions is kind of coming down from the camera top down towards us, right, or towards the character, I would play around with cast shadows a little bit. Because what that does is it helps sell the illusion of depth. And even though he's brightly lit, you just need to have more subtlety there. But if there's no variation in volume, it's going to come off as flat. And also, like if we're going to have the electrical intensity, and because it's shiny material, you can punch that back into the concept to show it's a highly reflective material. It's just being lit, Hey, Lurib, welcome back, man. How's it going? How's it going? And the same goes for like in this instance, like where to put the highlight on the shoulder pad if it goes against the light source. Like if we put the highlight up there, it means that this section is pointing closest to the light source. Or if we put it there, now this then turns more in perspective towards us, right? Because that point gets more lit. And it's a bit tricky, like where do you want to put the highlight in order to, or like, yeah, point of a source of the highlight source, to indicate direction. Where do you do it? And there's some perspective issues with the overlapping form here and there, but overall, pretty good. That's awesome, Lurib. Welcome back, man. Yeah, the design of the Stormtrooper is really cool. I would be careful of having this shape because that's very classic fantasy. The V. One thing that they've solved in movies when it's sci-fi, and they still want to kind of hint of it, is like they have a strong geometric shape. But it doesn't have a classic, like tapering form, or you have to just be bolder, simplify it a bit. And also things like if one part is closer to the other, you can't split it evenly in perspective. If you want to indicate rotation or anything, when it's very evenly balanced, it has a tendency to be squared off and forced and stiff, like here in the crotch. Need to, because I adjusted the perspective, I need to adjust the hip a little bit. Just for sake of presentation, when it's those small things that makes there's those tiny mistakes that makes a big impact when they're being, like I said, like there's a decision being made early on, and because you've made that decision, you're layering on top of it, and you're building the design and building the presentation around that little mistake. And then in the end, you're going like, what's broken? And then you realize what's broken, and then you have to redo it. And there's subtle things that breaks it, that are easy fixes when you see them. I mean, same applies for this guy. Same kind of thinking. But it's a cool designs. I really like the mountain. I like the marriage between them. It's really nice. And obviously, if they would be standing next to each other, he would be like that, right? It doesn't hurt to have a scale reference, you know. But it's cool. Cool design, Samir. Uh, good stuff. So that would be my feedback for you. Just think about stuff like that a little bit better. Like light, shadows, how they interact, perspective. It's the right way you're doing it. You just have to be a little bit more focused and aware of like cast shadows, form, uh, placement. Tikan, yeah, I'm doing a 2-week challenge paint over. So this is Algani Elite. I think the thumbnails are really cool. It's a great way of doing it. I see that you ran out of ideas towards the end. Ran out of variation. So pretty good. Good work, good explorations. I think looking at it, it's a great start, but it has some of the same mistakes that the other people have been doing. It's Final Gani. I mean, it's like it's an open-ended competition, not competition, but challenge. So let's say we look at the thumbnail, right? And the thumbnail shows that there is a section going back and then the legs going forward. So that being said, like that section then should be the section going backwards. So if it's angular, you need to show that the legs are going backwards and then the joint going down and then forward. Because if you cheat, it's just going to be confusing. So that's why, for example, it's important to do construction drawings at the very beginning when you're trying to figure out what you're designing. Like these thumbnails is a great way of kind of helping yourself remind yourself of, all right, what goes where. So by, for example, like I'm doing now, I'm redrawing your drawing just by simplifying the volumes and thinking about them in perspective. You know, which part go I'm completely ruining it. Anyways. So by forcing the leg incorrectly in perspective, you'll be able to start drawing it more cohesively. And like maybe you noticed on the drawings where I with the character standing, for example, if the character is standing, a human is standing with his legs forward in a pose, you maybe noticed I did a cross line over the volume, you know, indicating the ellipse in perspective. Right? Hopefully that makes sense. So what you got to do is you got to kind of apply that thinking at the same time when you're doing mechanical drawings or mechanical designs. You have to really try to figure out, okay, which part goes where in what perspective. So if I'm looking at this leg a little bit more from the side, I need to see this mechanical device a little bit more. But if this leg is pointing more towards me, with the foot planted like this, I can't see that device as much. Right? It needs to be orientated more behind the leg. And that's why construction drawing is really important, so that I should stop drawing lines over lines. So that when you do the lines and you break it down before you even start refining the sketch, you'll start seeing what you need to see a lot easier. So the problem here with your drawing is that you're breaking the perspective at too many places without a correct underdrawing or a correct understanding of volume. Not in general, like you don't understand volume, but in the drawing you don't understand the volume. You're confusing yourself a little bit. So by just rethinking the structure, think again of what you're doing to make sense of what part of the leg goes where. And that's like step one. Think about the construction, not just to draw the picture without the volume thinking. Like there's a guy called Glenn Vilpo. When he's drawing anatomy, he says draw through the form. Like you draw someone with the shoulder forward. You don't draw the silhouette of the shoulder. You draw the shoulder like it's a 3D object and draw through the form into the rib cage, right? And then you draw the rib cage around behind the shoulder. But you shouldn't draw the outline of the rib cage and then the line continues underneath the arm. The line you should think that the line goes behind the arm through the form. Tomku, yeah, he says many different things, but it's a valid way of thinking. And there's too many artists that try to design or construct something in perspective where they don't. They draw the silhouette and not the form. And that's when things are getting dicey, when you have to hand it over to someone else. Especially someone have to do it in 3D. And when they approach the design as a graphical design rather than as anything else. So I hope you see the point, Algani, in the legs, where there's a bit confusion in what goes where into what perspective. And when it comes to design, I think it's a good, clear, readable design. The shapes are quite nice. Slightly curved but angular, neutral, like it's doesn't have a character in the sense of, you know, overstating the personality of the robot. So it's a cool design. It looks slightly evil. I like this a little bit better than this. I think you've lost something. I think it could be the depth of the window, or the curved edges are a little bit too curved. It becomes a little bit cartoony and not like realistic in the way the depth of the window and how you rendered those shapes in the eye area. But yeah, it's cool, good stuff. Just be careful of the perspective things I talked about. It's too easy to jump the gun. Like I've shown on many times on the 30-minute warm-up of not doing it correctly from the beginning, and then it rolls into a shitty result. But good stuff design-wise. I like that little hat lip. Makes it feel like a robot head. It's pretty cool. Keep it up. My pleasure, Organi. Thanks for joining in. So this was Kuru. Thumbnailing, he didn't finish them. Pretty cool. Good amount of variation. I think this one is my favorite. It's a BB-8 body armor. In terms of readability, I think the values, in terms of how we read the character, they feel a bit too muddy. There's no clear rhythm in the values, design-wise. Like there has to be some sort of middle ground, and I would just like a bigger like I talk about having three clear value ranges, for example, in when you're thumbnailing, just to make sure that the rhythm of the characters read clearly. And I'm not saying you have to, but when a lot of values are very close to each other, the readability gets lost, because if I do this, there's not many of these designs that we can read clearly without like clear values. So I think it's 1, 2, and 4 we can read rather good. 2 and 4 being the best. Of course, you know, one can argue that when it's too obvious value range design, it becomes too 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 pushed, forced, and not realistic. But that, if you wouldn't go with that, you still need a clear readability in the design. So by just like subtly shifting some of the values in the wash, you could easily make the designs read better. But that's, who's this? Sansa? No, not Sansa. Stark, that assassin girl. It's pretty cool. I see the idea, but he should have done a clear Han Solo. You know, she's running solo. Arya, there we go. Yeah. So who was this? This is the Red Skull. What's his name? Red Clay Skull. There we go. So this is pretty cool. I like the idea. It's a cool cool design. I think the back arm is annoying me, and the way this line goes. Let me switch off ArtStation because it's bleeping like crazy. Where's ArtStation? Ah, screw it. That line is creating like an X. So I would probably relax it a little bit. And then this back arm, the way the wrist is angled and the arm, I don't know what it is that irks me, but I think it's because it hangs lower than the other hand. And the wrist is slightly broken. Or not broken, but like weak. And the thumb is... We're seeing the hand and the palm in silhouette, which makes it feel overly posed. Like it's like, this is my hand, I need to put the hand in an ultimate angle so we all can understand it's a hand, rather than the hand position being a part of the body and the action. It's like when we're over explaining the silhouette with, let's say, pointy shoulder blades, like the pointy shoulder blades are equally pointy on each side, even though the character is rotated in perspective. Right? A lot of people do that for the sake of making the statement that's pointy shoulder blades or pointy shoulder pads. I mean, and that's one of the things like with the hand is that it doesn't always need to be super explained in silhouette and perfect because that explanation can occur within the silhouette. And if you have too many silhouette changes, like information all in the silhouette, you're creating a very jagged read of the painting. So it's pretty cool. Overall, the design and so on, it reads like fun. One issue I have is this shoulder pad and arm. It's just there. Yeah, exactly. It kind of explains it in a 2D image fashion. I would probably just have a little bit of information within the chest area just to indicate that there is some sort of functionality there and not just a floating thing. And the arm, the hair pointing out like that, it's a little bit too even. And these two things are very even as well. So it creates this really odd, also this really odd dark shape there. And it obstructs how we read the character. Like how, when we read across the face, we stop here and go down. We don't stop at the face. So let me demonstrate by lifting that area up a bit and reducing the contrast. Now we're landing at the face, right? And if we switch that off, we don't go to the face. We look at that ear, that negative space there, because that's the contrast point. And also, in a picture where there's a lot of verticality, like we have the trees, we have the him, and so on, we can see indications of it, but I would always try to have a diagonal, be it like you know, like a change in the light source or something, just to help the eye not go up and down, up and down, up and down the image too much. And also, if we would control the highlights a little bit, you could have the strongest highlights where you need them. Of course, this is a little bit heavy-handed, but you get the idea, right? If you want that whiteout feel, you can still have a diagonal in the whiteout feel. So that's my 2 cents. The color variation. Well, if you're gonna have a whiteout, like a snow scene, you can control the shadow side of the snow and the lit side, and that has to have a clear volume, like a separation. Like Jamie Jones does it well. Like it's a clear separation. But the thing is, you got to let one dictate the flow of the image over the other. So is it the shadows of the snow that's going to dictate the rhythm, or is it the white of the snow that's going to dictate the rhythm? That meaning details in the white aspect of the snow, or details in the shadow aspect of the snow. Yeah, I think the variation is cool, and it reads. Uh, you can play around with speculars and how reflective certain things are. But yeah, I'm not gonna have too much more time, so I'm gonna kind of cycle through most of them. There's so many. Gonna hurry up a little bit. Dictate the rhythm. Okay. So in this image, for example, the rhythm would be the characters and the background. The background, for example, have a very clear rhythm of where light is and dark is. And in the characters, that line becomes a little bit muddier. And if we think about an image, um, in this instance, was his name Jamie Jones? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. One second, I'm loading an image. So this is the artist Jamie Jones. So, for example, like here, if you look at the lit part of the snow, the lit part of the snow has very little information. It's very subtle, right? And the shadow aspect of the snow and where it breaks up, that is the dictating aspect of the snow, right? How we're reading through the image is not dictated by the lit parts of the snow, but the shadow parts of the snow. And you can do the same statement in the design of the tank, for example. But the tank then becomes another rhythm. It could be the design rhythm of the silhouette. But you have to choose when you're doing an illustration or painting information what is going to dictate the rhythm in terms of light or shadow, materials, and so on. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Yeah, exactly, red clay skulls. I think this one is really cool. Who was this? Sandrock, new person. I think it's really nice. I think the big curves going through the image works really well. The lower ends here and here doesn't really help the image. I mean, the lower right becomes a little bit too depictive. It's a little bit cartoony in the sense of how they're placed and why they're placed there, and how we read the image. For me personally, the interesting aspect is here, not so much what these people do. I would say they are not important to the narrative. The narrative lies here between those two, and that's where I would focus in on. Build up the image, having lines like the lines you're having that flows through the image, like that, is really nice. And a circle in the middle, and having the flow of information like that. It's really good composition. Shows a lot of promise when we cut out the unnecessary stuff. Like, it's something with composition. You have to be strong in its simplicity, and even if it's complicated, you have to have a hierarchy in how we're reading the image. So this shows great potential. You can play with how we're flowing through the image, and what's important, what's the key aspects of it. I would say it has lots of potential, and I would slowly build the image from this point of thinking, okay, what's the narrative, what do I want to communicate? Don't overcomplicate it, keep it simple. And making something simple doesn't make it easy. you know be able to finish something that's easy to the greatest of your abilities is a huge ask, right? And only when you've done that multiple times, you can start, going up the difficulty level. Yeah, the values are really nice here. And one thing which is a problem moving forward is maintaining the readability of the light, the value range, and maintaining the groups of information versus what's being lit and what's in shadow. Soft versus sharp edges as well. There's some nice lost edges happening versus sharp edges, and that's some very tricky to do. And down here it's a little bit over like over detailed. Can be a lot more suggestive. But yeah, cool. I wouldn't go full black, full white till the end. Like a guy I know, the art director at Massive Black, Justin Kaufman, he said like it's like an orgasm. You have to hold it back as long as possible to the very end, and then at the very end release it to have the ultimate one. Um, Not my words, but his words. But it's true. Like that's why I always do like color grading and contrast shifts and so on at the very end of my paintings. I try not to do it at the in the middle. My lunch is out. Lunch is running out. Such a shame for all you awesome entries. This is Jacob Mobley. I'll quickly run through them. Very nice shapes, great patterns. Really helps with the readability. The shapes in here gets really funky. It's very hard to understand what's happening in here. That doesn't come across. Is he like morphing? Is he losing mass? Either way, it's a bit confusing. This being the hero of that of the page. These are really nice shapes here. I would push the colors a little bit more. Great shapes. The tail is a little bit too flat. Be careful of the swooshiness here. It's a bit confusing. Really nice. This is a cool idea. The blue and it's a bit hard to understand what's happening in perspective wise, but there's some cool elements in there. Who was this? It was Tom Koo. C3PO with a broadsword, or what are they called? Freaking awesome. Be careful of here too many voluminous bananas in his shoulder. When the problem is when you're doing design elements like that, you have to have a clarification of those shapes further down, or in this instance further down. Or if you're making these folds on the shoulder and you're repeating them throughout the form, that doesn't become an element of design or reality. It just becomes the banana coat or cape. But if it's like those shapes, it means, oh, the fabric is being stressed, it's being pushed together by the underlying mass and so on. But then when you go further down and the distances between the fold are even, you're flattening the impression. You're reducing what the intent is. So whenever you're doing designs in shape and folds and so on, you have to consider material and folds and how they read as a whole with the character. And the same applies here as the other feedback about light and how we are perceiving the light in perspective, and the same with Atsuki. Very depictive background. We're seeing it from the side. Here's the mountain range, here's the sky. Again, it's going to sound a bit harsh, like I said to Atsuki, but it's like a child's drawing of an environment. Like Like here's the hill, here's the tree on the horizon, here's the rainbow on over on top of it. If it would be a movie shot and blurry, there would be stuff like that, and then we wouldn't know what this element is, but it's blurry there in the background. Maybe there's something over here. Maybe the problem is when it becomes too depictive and you're focusing in on the horizon line, yet you're keeping everything blurry. It just becomes confusing, right? Yeah, Tomko, it shows, by the way, that you did. But it's all good. That's the idea of a 2 week challenge. Challenge yourself to see what you can do. Find your flaws, work on the flaws next time, if you want to. There's no right or wrong. It's just me giving you feedback and how I see it. Take it as you want. Push them back more. The legs? Yeah, I simplify the light to bring the focal point up to the head. So talked about Jacob Mobleys. They're really cool. There's some confusion in shapes and so on, but all good. Chillstrand. Oh yeah, Boba Fett. Awesome. Um, your problem, Chillstrand, is your value range is too close to each other. Um, there's a simple test that is not foolproof, mind you, but like threshold. If we do a threshold pass on this, and you look at the value range, at what point are we starting to see what's being lit and what's being in shadow before the image is being blown out? Again, this is not a foolproof thing, but you can see the issues with your value range, right? It's all very narrow and very close to each other. Zialin, yeah, I will put up a new one, maybe next Sunday, just to give me some time. So my advice to you, Chilstrand, to make sure your value range is more clearer. Like I talked to ASCII too about with pencils, like clearly separate the value range in simplified lit shadow and then in between. Larib, yeah, I mean, if you subscribe, you help support this venture of mine of doing daily streams now for 3 years. And as a thank you for helping me, I help you by giving you a private sketchbook section in the Discord, and I will spend significantly more time giving constructive feedback there than on Share Your Art, because I will make sure to take time when I have it um, to give you feedback on what you're doing. Of course, I do that on Share Your Art channel, but it's reduced due to time limitations. You know nothing, C3P Snow. Merici, I'm currently trying to sell a movie to Hollywood. And OMS is the same issue with light. If we take a look at this threshold test, like I said, it's a shitty way of explaining it, but you can see like when it's being forced, I hit puberty. When it's being forced into light and dark, we're starting to read the rhythm, but there's no point where it's a clear image where all the characters read correctly. We have to adjust it to find the best solution for each character, uh, because Alm's value range is not separated either, and it's a little bit all over the place in terms of how we are supposed to read it. Like we can see it when we really look at it now, like what's in being in shadow and what's being lit. It's like that separation is really hard to read on most of these characters. Another thing Pro 42, yeah, yeah. We don't have an agent, but we did it ourselves. It's through producers. Um, Back to OMS. OMS, you're really moving forward. What you have to focus on now is readability. You've always had this issue with light, and then sharpness of turning form versus smooth forms. Like his coat and a lot of armor, they have the same gradient, like a soft airbrush curve. And what you got to do is practice hard versus soft edges. Kinda, kind of. Azavido. Let's see if he has an explanation handy. Maybe he's just talking about it on his lectures. But when he's sketching, like he's not trying to sketch the full value range from whitest white to dark blackest black, and try to separate which value is in being lit and which value is in shadow, and which how should we read the form, right? What he does is a great point that he's making, is that you have to truncate the value range, say from so it's not value 1% white, 2% white, 3% white, and then you like sit and fiddle the curve when you're painting. It's like from 0 to 15 value range, that's one mark. Then 15 to 15% white to 40% white is another lump you can apply. And if you make that really hard separation between the value range, then you say this is in shadow of the body and this is being lit in the body. Like on this hand, like I can make a perfect value range from every single little value difference in here, but that doesn't necessarily help the readability of it. If I would place this to the lower 40% of the value range and this just one value, and then here I could play with variation, we would still be able to see the hand and read it as a hand, but we don't need that perfect full scale of everything. And that's where OMS is hurting a bit. Like on her, the third character in, that readability is starting to read, but it's still a bit too messy. So what you got to do is practice that aspect a lot more, and also soft and hard edges, fast and slow turning forms is your Achilles heel. I've seen it too many times in your paintings. A lot of it feels like it's made out of soft fabric. You're starting to get a lot better at it. It's a really cool merge when we look at design, but the design falls short when it comes to those soft turning forms everywhere. Boom! Finished. Red clay, yeah, it varies depending on situation and style and material and all these things. Chrome doesn't have a, you know, chrome versus cotton. It's completely two different, complete behaviors. Tonium, yeah, material and surface. All right, that's it. My pleasure, Amir, man. That's what the 2-week challenge is for. Up that game of ours. Let's have a look. What's she doing? Hey, Lou Rib. Awesome, man. Thanks for the subscription. I'll set up sketchbooks for you. The first thing. Oh, look at that. She's doing design. Oh yeah, that's like my favorite thing. That's Radar. Seal inside. Awesome, Lurib. Have a great one, everyone. Thanks for joining for the 2 week challenge. I will post a new 2 week challenge coming Sunday. Until then, do your homework. See you tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Toodles. Oh no, I failed. Seal. Seal. Inside. Ah, there we go. Let's rate her. Let's all give her some love. She's a cool artist. I don't never see her with like shit tons of people, yet she's never a tits and ass streamer, which is great, which the creative needs more, so make sure to click follow on her and give her some support. I follow her. You should too. Alright, see you tomorrow morning. Toodles.